Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. I'm your host, Wendy V, and in season 3, we're redefining success for social entrepreneurs looking to grow their revenue. If you have reality-changing ideas, this is the place for you. Let's jump right into today's episode. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to give a percentage of your sales to your favorite cause? Well, I have somebody here who can tell us exactly what that's like, and she'll tell us how she did it. This is my wonderful friend, Christy Floriani, and she is going to be here to tell us how she has started Freedom Promotions. So Christy, tell us, who are you and how do you make an impact?
Okay, so who I am, I like to get a little outrageous with my words. So I'm a warrior for literacy. I like to say that because that's what it's all about for me. It's a very deep passion that I have that's both for individuals and their success in life and our communities. It's just something that reaches everyone and disrupts a lot of our economy and our social welfare in this country. So I got started with it, sort of like you, Wendy, back in the 90s. I was going to, well, I don't know about the 90s for you, but I went to college and thought I was going to be in psychology until I realized that I wasn't really going to spend some good quality time with people and not with the people who were most deeply in need. I learned a lot through internship that I took in London, England, and I worked at Bayswater Family Center, which was a drop-in center for families who were displaced. And when you're in London and families are there and they're displaced, they're often coming from London's commonwealths all over. So Ethiopians, royalty from other countries will be in London and find themselves homeless. So it opened my eyes to what social work can be in that where I was working, I was helping with the children's area. Parents were in a lounge doing laundry, cooking food together. They were there. It was a community of support there. And they had drop-in services. So families who are living, many people in one room with a hot plate and a shared bathroom, they would get out of those circumstances, come over to the family center and have some community, some fellowship, and some release. So that was sort of the downstairs of that fellowship center. And then upstairs, they had financial, counseling, health support. It was just a really beautiful model. And it made me see how it's really the whole system, the family system, the people that needs to be embraced if you want to make changes. And that's how I see social work. It's a wraparound set of services. So I got my start back then, and then ultimately got my master's degree in social work in 99 and spent most of my time with children and families. From the beginning, my thought process was work myself out of a job. I don't want to have to this job. And the folks that I was working with don't necessarily want to have to be recipients of these services. So let's figure out the most practical way and the most efficient way to get up and out of low resource communities or systems or, cycles. And without exception, the best way that parents knew how to get themselves and their children up and out of these cycles was through education. In the US, let's face it, it's who you know or what you know, and many people don't have connections. They don't have the who you know, but they do have some sort of ability to control what you know. Unfortunately, there are less opportunities in communities that have low resources. So going into those communities and helping to lift up parents, show them their strengths, and lift up children, show them their opportunities, and lock arms with them for a year or so has really been my passion. So that brings me through most of my social work career. Just very recently, in the past 5 years, I was a home visitor to parents of children prenatal to 3, talking about early brain development, talking about literacy and school, being prepared to go into school through preschool and kindergarten. And it was in that capacity that I met my now husband, Brian, who started a nonprofit organization in our area called Bernie's Book Bank. He had started it about 15 years earlier out of his garage, like so many entrepreneurs do, and working crazy hours and 3 other jobs. Bernie's Book Bank was an answer to the literacy problem that Brian saw when he was a reading paraprofessional in the schools. Children are super excited to read. That is not a problem. Even with video games, I've not seen that as a problem. They're very excited to read and to learn. However, the amount of information and resources coming towards them can be severely limited by the economic community, the economic situation that their family's in and that the community's in. So Brian, if I may toot his horn, he saw that there are several factors that impact literacy, and one of the most tangible and viable to modify or improve is book ownership. And there's a positive correlation between the number of books in the home, in a child's home, and their later reading proficiency in life. So he isolated that variable. So this is something we can change. And he started Bernie's Book Bank. Bernie's Book Bank now serves over 300,000 children in Chicagoland with 8 quality books every year. And so the families that I worked with, the children that I was working with, were recipients of these books, and I just was completely blown away by both the massive amount of change that he had been able to do through Bernie's Book Bank, and also the nonprofit organization model that he was upholding in that culture at Bernie's Book Bank. So we ended up getting married just a few years ago. And we are now also working as social entrepreneurs, if you will. We have a for-profit company that provides promotional products. I never would have guessed I would be in promotional products with a master's in social work. But we provide promotional products to companies, individuals, and organizations. And then we take all of our profits and invest them back into literacy programs. So to date, we've been able to invest $60,000 in for nonprofits. And we haven't written our check for 2024 yet. So it'll be much more by the time this podcast airs. So that's a really sweeping description. Did I get to your question?
Oh my gosh. You made me have 10 more questions, in fact. And in so many other discussions, like I think that the audience probably can already tell why I brought you on the podcast. 1, you're a wealth of knowledge in social work and social impact. 2, you're an inspiration in your story as a person. I love your love story being involved in this too. If you're looking for grant funding and don't know where to start, let me introduce you to the secret that even grant writers don't know. Idea to Impact, the grant writing course that makes it easy to learn everything from A to Z about grant writing in plain English with on-demand half-hour modules and go at your own pace workbooks. This course is unlike any other because it delivers insider tips from a grant reviewer and grant creator, me. I've awarded over $35 million in grants throughout my career, and I give you access to all of the resources and knowledge that you need to apply for millions of dollars on your own, no grant writer needed. Sign up today at wendyvelos.com/grants. The ability to continue to transform your passion over time, right? Like learning new ways to give back, learning new ways to make an impact. Like it's just such a beautiful soundbite for people of how we can change as social entrepreneurs over time and how our emphasis on where we use our energy can change. And so I love the example that you gave, and it's a beautiful story. I want to start with one part about how do you maintain that passion? Because you've gone, from, like you said, all the way from social work school. You and I both had went to social work school, just a little bit off from each other. Remember what that was like at that time. And then coming out and trying to find your way in the social work world and the various roles you could take. But it seems like you've been able to maintain momentum for years and years through different roles. How have you been able to do that as the change maker?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Burnout is real. Burnout is real in the nonprofit sector. I think I've been blessed with the fact that my passion for literacy is both nature and nurture. So it runs incredibly deep for me. I draw from my father's story. He grew up in Brooklyn, first generation Irish, and he really did not think his life was going anywhere. He was goofing off in a vocational high school, and one teacher pulled him aside and said, you have more than this to offer, and you can build a life that includes college, that includes, a white collar job. That just blew my father's mind. Like, really, I could do that. So that one teacher impacted him to the extent that my dad ended up going to Michigan State from New York to Michigan State University, getting his undergraduate and his master's, and being a high school teacher for 35 years. And throughout those years, it was a small town. I would hear from students of his of all different ages, and the tremendous impact he had on them. So that's one piece of the many facets that keep me going. Another is just I know what books and reading and learning have been for me. I grew up in modest circumstances, and I knew I needed to earn a scholarship to college academically, and I did so. It's not that easy for everybody, but it did happen to come to me with a lot of hard work. Now, those are just my foundation, but every single person I meet in these situations where they're in a compromised place, they have to be vulnerable to caseworkers. They have to tell their story over and over again to hospitals and so forth. Their ability to stay strong and proud while they share this deep and sometimes disturbing information is phenomenal. They're uncomfortable every day. And I just draw tremendous strength from that. I can be as uncomfortable as I need to be to ensure that someone else can have more comfort in their life and improve their lifestyle, and then have that ripple down in further generations. Another little part of this is that I have changed jobs several times. I do like a challenge, and I have been searching. I finally found my ideal position, but I have changed things up quite a bit. Thank you. Thanks for the little clap. I
Yes,
have changed.
yay.
Yes. I have taken zigs and zags into corporate work and teaching yoga and so forth. But yes, definitely some of that change really helps keep me going.
Yeah, and I think some of us love the change too. The change can be motivating.
Yes, absolutely. Fresh start. Yeah. And I mentioned my husband. I mean, it's just amazing to be able to talk to someone else every day and to work alongside someone else who feels as passionately as I do, and who's willing to do, even more than I've ever done. So that's,
I was going to ask you about this love story because I'm a 40-something-year-old woman. So I always like, I'm waiting for my one, like, where's he going to come at, right?
oh,
I would
yeah.
love if he was another change maker. Like if he had another mission that was complementary to my mission, oh my God, I would be so excited about that, right? So can you tell me what that was like to fall in love with somebody who's as amazing as you at changing the world? Like, what was that like?
I certainly didn't think of myself as amazing, but it has been phenomenal, Wendy. When I used to dream about my future, I envisioned, being with someone who also was passionate about children, families, and social causes, and that didn't happen. And I'll be frank, I had marriages and I just thought I was the one who was passionate about these things and they carried other passions, whether it be for finance or whatever they were following. In the meantime, when I was divorced and trying to find my way back into the professional world that I cared about, which was social work, I had to start kind of back at entry level positions. So I had taken an entry level position and worked up to management. I was working with children in elementary school that was a Title I school, and therefore they were receiving books from Bernie's Book Bank. And I got laid off from that job. The school board decided that they wanted to go in a different direction. I'm laid off. I had a summer that was kind of terrifying, being laid off as a single mom. And I was laser focused on working at Bernie's Book Bank. So I met Brian because I was in a coffee shop doing my LinkedIn and all of my Indeed posting for jobs and everything. But my heart was at Bernie's Book Bank. Couple fun things to note. Bernie was also my father's name, and it's Brian, my husband, named the book bank after his father, Bernie, who has a very similar story to my dad. So I knew that golf is integral into the Bernie's Book Bank path. I won't, digress into that. But my dad was also a golf coach. My parents had an antique book business. There were so many layers that were meaningful to me. And not the least of which was that I would not have to work in the basement of a church again. And there's nothing wrong with churches, but there's a mentality, right? In your social work field, there's a somewhat of a martyr mentality, somewhat of we just have to do the best we can with the least amount of resources. And if you actually put that equation together, you're doing that for the people who need it most. It doesn't make sense. Bernie's Book Bank, I'm a commercial for them, but they really believed in investing in their staff and retention. And so this was hot on my list of where I wanted to work. I'm typing away. I look up and I see my now husband, Brian, in that coffee shop. He stopped in for a quick coffee and I said, I just went up and introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm a fan. Frankly, I'd love to work with Bernie's Book Bank. I don't know if there's any opportunities. And at that point, he had taken a step back from day-to-day ops and hired a CEO. So he said, hey, I can introduce you. We can, give you a tour. And that's about where things landed, basically. I had a tour. I met the CEO. There wasn't a position at the time. And that was that. That was in probably 2017 or 18. I'm not sure. But in December of 2020, life was, for everyone, life was a little bit kooky, nutty, bananas, but we had been very, very busy. All of our families needed us more than ever. So I've been very, very busy, but also, as everyone, just going through a very difficult time personally with all that time alone. And he reached out over LinkedIn, said, hey, let's have a coffee. And I was like, oh, I saw that he started another company. I'm going to brush up on my resume. I'm going to be ready to shine. But it was also kind of strange. Like I hadn't heard from him in years, and here we are. We're going to have a coffee. I was not, at that point in my life, not familiar with networking coffees or anything like that. I just rolled with it. So I met him for coffee and I was so nervous. I was so tongue-tied that he talked for like an hour. We had a great conversation. My resume never made it out of the bag. It was just kind of like, hey, like you and I talk, we're
Let's
both
just hang out over coffee.
exactly. Well, we have similar missions, and he too had been through a very difficult time in his life. We both lost our fathers, and we talked about that. I mean, I choked up and teared up, but I also left there thinking there's no job for me, and I might have kind of bombed that. Um, so
So you bombed the
with
job part of the meeting, but you probably did really well on the potential wife part.
honest to God, and Brian will stand here and tell you he agrees. I bombed both aspects. Like I just wasn't free to be myself. I did not know yet who Brian was. I had put him on a pedestal because of his accomplishments. I just didn't know how much of myself can I be. And I learned a lot from holding back on how much I could be, because he reached out again for coffee and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be my full self. I like to say I'm going to bring my mojo, leave the resume at home, and just see if we can make a friendship or whatever else happens. We're both at a better place in our lives when we met for coffee the next time, and there was chemistry immediately. And we were both just people who don't want to waste time on holding back, feeling fearful, feeling self-conscious. We just both put it all out there. This is who I am. These are some of the terrible things that have happened that I've been a part of and I'm accountable for. And let's just lay all that out and what we are looking for and see if we want to go further. So every day was kind of a deep dive into who the other person was, who we are as a couple. And within 9 months, we were engaged and we had purchased a house. And then a year later, we were married. And then it was 1 year later after that Freedom Promotions was launched. We're blessed. We're blessed.
I love
Yeah.
that. So I'm going to keep watching my LinkedIn
Yeah.
coffee chats for potential dates.
Right.
But I think it's such a beautiful story. And I love getting into the personal part of you as a human, because all of us are doing this work. Like you're saying, you're showing up for other people, trying to give your best, even with limited resources and people who've already been used to limited resources. And then you still have to go home and be a human. You still have to have a family or a life. You still have to feel fulfillment. You still take all of that baggage and have to put it somewhere so you could be fulfilled on your off time. And it's just great for people to hear, like, we all have these different things. But I love what you said at the end. We're going to show up with things that have happened to us or traumas that have happened to us. But if you're putting it all out there and you're being honest and transparent and healing through that, even healing with your partner through that, it's possible for you to have a fulfilling life at home and at work. Right? And it's possible for you to even find a partner who's going to contribute to that, which is like a whole other level.
Truly, it's blown all of my expectations away. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And so shout out to Brian and his mission and the mission with Bernie's Book Bank. I think it's great. So I want to go back to also just this thought of there's Freedom Promotions is not where you were planning to be, because you're, again, rooted in social work, all these different types of helping roles that you've had. But the business model that you created is something that a lot of people don't think about, is how can I give a percentage or all of my sales to a particular cause that I'm passionate about? You obviously had a very easy slam dunk of, I know I'm passionate about literacy, so this is where my money's going to go. Other people might struggle with what would that look like. But can you talk a little bit about, from a business owner's perspective, why would someone choose this? Or how do you even decide that you're going to give in this way? And maybe it's not so much of your proceeds, maybe it's a small percentage one time. But I think it's something that more people should think about as business owners.
Absolutely. We had the idea from Paul Newman's own. That made date us as well, but I think everyone's familiar with Bombas socks. You buy one, you give one, or Tom's shoes. So, in essence, that's the business model. We provide products and services that people need. They're already going to be purchasing these things, and they can purchase them at the same price and with the same quality or better. And then just know that we're going to be really responsible with that money, pay ourselves a little bit, and then send that money to our, we have 4 beneficiaries. So it's such a natural fit. It just makes complete sense. If you think about purpose-driven purchasing, the surge in social responsibility, DEI, those kinds of things, all stakeholders, employees, consumers, stockholders, all stakeholders are looking to see whether or not the companies that they're working with have a heartbeat, have a finger on the pulse of their community, have something that they care about that goes deeper than their financial bottom line. So we can offer that to them easily. They it's already in their marketing budget. And just to tell you about how the genesis of that really happened through Bernie's Book Bank, because it's a very strongly dependent on volunteers. So it's a model where there are 2 to 3 volunteer shifts every day of 50 or more volunteers. So it's really run on volunteers, and that's super attractive to corporate groups for team building. The space here in Chicagoland also has places for meetings and events. So we have some very big corporate pools come over, do some team building through service, and then have their annual meeting or whatever in one of the event rooms. So when you see that happen over and over again, you also see that they're all wearing the same t-shirt whenever they volunteer together. And that t-shirt is coming from their marketing budget, not their philanthropic budget, because they're going to take pictures, selfies, and everything they can do showing the face of the people, the brand of the company, and the activity that's happening to just really drive home their connection to their community. So with Bernie's Book Bank, bringing in these groups of corporate volunteers, there's already the establishment that this company has established literacy as a primary goal in their philanthropic desires. They're coming in to volunteer already, so we know literacy's on their mind, as well as poverty. Literacy can, impact all the domains of service, but poverty is a big one. So Brian's wheels were ticking. He was seeing all these matching shirts and these, mugs and so forth as advertising. Looked into promotional products, realized the number varies, but like a $25 billion industry every year. And so we just found the best people doing that and locked arms with them. They wanted to have some more meaning and substance to their careers, and we needed someone who was ready to hit the ground running. So our collaboration here, we have people who've been doing this for decades. We were able to, on day one, offer company stores and take care of our really big clients, companies who were investing in Bernie's Book Bank. They have needs, and it was a no-brainer for them to also use us as a vendor for their promo products needs and apparel and that sort of thing. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and it does. And I'm going to do a commercial because I happen to have a Freedom Promos original mug that I ordered from my business for my Elevate Her Worth event that still has, I could see I've got lipstick all over it because I use it all the time. This was at my house within 10 days. Like when people think about promotional products, sometimes it's at the last minute. And that was definitely us. And so the way that when I ordered this through Christy's company and I got it like at my house, packaged nicely, no mugs broken, everything amazing, high quality, exactly what I needed. and several dollars cheaper than anywhere else. So that on top of that, my money is going to a good cause. It's like, oh yeah, anytime I need anything, I'm going to Freedom Promotions. Like that's, now you're my vendor, right? So, and I think that's the way we need that. We need to have those other businesses that we know are giving back and are part of our network and we know they're going to provide good service to us or our customers, but we also can feel good about doing business with that business. And so I love that we have that partnership, just to be transparent about like where my mugs come from. But I think, people need to hear that these are options because, like you said, you can choose to use your purchasing power for a purpose. And rather than giving your money to anyone, you can be more discerning. It might take a little bit more effort, but if you find the right partners, you have a partner for life, so anything you need.
Yes.
I love it. Well, we talked about a lot of things today. We're going to start wrapping up the episode. I have two final questions for you. The first one is really just about you as a woman and you as a person, a founder, who you're doing your work. How do you maintain your well-being and your beautiful hair, by the way? How do you maintain your own well-being while you're showing up to serve so many other people?
Thank you for the compliment on the hair. My dad gets all the credit for the follicles. I get all the credit for the curls. For the styling.
Both are needed.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I'm learning a ton from my husband. He is very good at, a lot of dudes will say this, compartmentalizing. And that's a strategy that really helps us work together as a couple as well. I never thought I would be good at working, with my husband or significant other, but I'm learning a lot. And part of that is we designate time that business is done, business conversations are done. We'll get back to that when it's regular business hours, so to speak. As my son, who's 18, as he's been growing, I've had more freedom to get to the gym. That's super important to me and impacts my life in many ways. Yeah, I think really just having that balance, that understanding. For me, I'm a Christian, and I just measure everything against my priorities, which are God, my husband, my family, and the work we do, and then make sure that the decisions I'm making move me towards that ambition of being not just, I guess, super successful as defined by financial or power status. Super successful to me means, rich and loving relationships and connection to all humans and their struggles. That's successful to me. I just can't feel right if I'm detached. So I feel very balanced. And it's very important for me to say right now that this is, compared to any of my work in social work, I don't even feel like I'm working. I get to do things like, meet phenomenal people like you, have great conversations, and accomplish a lot in business development. I loved the work I did, but it was hard. It was very hard and challenging. Meeting the standards of our funders always required more paperwork. That, unfortunately lessened my capacity or my bandwidth to be with and support the families I wanted to. So I also have, I'd like to say, a pretty easy life that way.
Yeah. Being in business is so different from providing direct services, but you get to do so many amazing, fun things that I never knew entrepreneurship was a thing. Like you said, I didn't know how to do coffee dates and networking and build business development, all of these things. Who knew I would have a podcast, like all of it, right? And I think as women, but particularly when you're in the field of social work, you're so ingrained in the way that field operates that you don't even know that you could also be a social worker and an entrepreneur. Like that. Whoa. You could write books and be a social worker? Like what? So So many things we could stay talking about. I absolutely love your energy. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you ended on a point that this season of this podcast is all about redefining success. And you just gave us a wonderful definition and way to redefine success as humans and as change makers. So thank you for that bullet point at the end. I didn't even get to ask you this redefining success question, but you answered it anyway, which is great. But one last question for you. As people are thinking about how to connect with you, if they resonated with something you said in this episode, if they want to get some promotional materials, where can folks find you? Where would you direct them best to connect with you after the episode?
Absolutely. We have a website, Freadom. It's spelled FREADOM, freedompromotions.com. Notice the read at the center. And there you can find out lots of information. We always, kind of urge you to spend a little bit of time on there, but let us do that search for you so we can work with the factories that are responsible. We know a lot more than what you can see on when you're shopping around on a website, and that's incredibly time consuming. So we like to kind of be boutique level, like personal shoppers with you. So freedompromotions.com for our promotional products and berniesbookbank.org. So that's BerniesBookbank.org. And that's where you can find out more about the nonprofit organization, Bernie's Book Bank. If I may, I don't want to leave this without mentioning our 4 beneficiaries. Did I already say who they are?
We didn't, but we should. Yes. So Freedom Promotions
Okay,
gives the proceeds to these 4 organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. So we give 100% of our profits to these 4 organizations. One is Bernie's Book Bank's national expansion. So they have now 2 sites in Chicago and Milwaukee. And in 2025, they're launching the Southwest Florida site. And the vision is to be in every major metropolitan area, think like food banks. So that's number 1. And number 2, Little Free Libraries. Most people know the adorable houses that contain books in your neighborhood. Well, Little Free Libraries is worldwide, and they put those libraries in areas where they are book deserts, where there aren't friendly neighbors stocking it with books, So those 2, Read Alliance and Reading Partners are both on the tutoring side of things, and they're also national organizations. So we have a national scope because Bernie's Book Bank is national. So those are the 4, and you can read more about them on our website or their websites if you want to look those up. Best way to reach me is my email, which is Christy, CHRISTY, @freedompromotions.com.
Awesome. And we can add the email to the notes as well. So folks, and again, obviously can find you on LinkedIn, but don't jump into your DMs for a coffee date because that's already taken. So we've got, yeah. So I love the time we spent together, Christy. Thank you again so much for being here in this episode. And thank you to the listeners for coming back for another episode. We'll be back again in a couple, I think it's every 2 weeks that we have episodes dropping. So we're getting close to the end of the season. We should be ending the season somewhere around March 2025. And we're just grateful to people like Christy for coming through. So thank you, Christy, for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Wendy. And for anyone listening, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, listeners, we'll see you again for another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we look forward to having you come back. If you're curious about something we shared, make sure you check in the show notes below. And do you want the secret to make your nonprofit or business more sustainable and more profitable? Hop into my Learn, Grow, Thrive University, where I give you exclusive access to resources, mini courses, and templates for free. All you need to do is sign up at wendyvelos.com/university. See you next episode.